Hi, I'm Elder. I get a lot of my viewers that are always asking, why don't I plant my trees in the ground? And do I grow any in the ground? Well, I'm going to share with you, not only do I grow specific trees in the ground, but I'm also going to share with you how I treat them every spring and fall when it comes to part of their feeding routine. Let's get right to it. Now notice this particular tree is a Santa Rosa plum. I place all of my stone fruit in raised beds. A simple raised bed like you would build for your typical garden, except these are measured 32 by 33, and you can have them for whatever size you want. But the bottoms are open to the ground, and this allows for better drainage for your trees, especially if you're dealing with clay soil or too much sandy soil. You can throw all your organic matter and your amendments together. Now you'll notice there's some white powdery mildew here, not mildew, but residue. And then there's some other pebbles. Now this is simple, and I'm gonna show you what this is. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and use my tool here, and I'm gonna scratch it into the soil. May I remind you, I've already pre-wetted this entire soil mass in the box. And so everything is already wet. Every spring and every fall, you need to do this with your trees, okay? Now, pay very close attention. When it comes to feeding my trees, I feed my trees that are in the ground, I feed them 2 times per year. I feed them in April and in August. Some people would feed them in March or July, but I tend to do it according to the weather. And it's been a little bit cold for certain plants, but my trees, I come around and I feed them during that time. The first feeding happens with what you see, the azomite and my special fertilizer. And then I come around and I hit them with about 3 to 4 inches of compost from my own garden that I created, okay? And that's the feeding right here. And then I come around again in July and I do the same thing. Azomite, my special fertilizer mix, and with another 2 to 4 inches of compost. Now you'll notice that right now you can't tell, but as I go in here and I go around my tree like so, and I put this soil on the outside, you'll notice right now that there's a little bit discrepancy between the top and right here, about 1 inch. Well, before I just mixed this soil up, there was about a 4-inch discrepancy. So it's just fluffed up right now. So I'm gonna put 4 inches back in here. It's gonna be a nice high mound, but remember, all of that nutrition from that compost is going to sink down over time as everything gets wet in. So here's my dripper already hooked up to my dripper irrigation, and I simply put this here. Every other month, I will rotate this to where it's over here. Now, I am going to be changing my lines out here. I'm going to take up all of my drip irrigation, and I'm going to make it to where the tree has 2 drips, 1 on each side. This is very important because you want to make sure that you wet the entire root ball. Now, some people will tell you that the root ball is going to absorb the water, and the soil around the root ball is also going to absorb the water. So you don't have to worry about both sides being wet. I dispute that. I have tested my own soil, and I have found that there was pockets and areas that were so dry in comparison to the left side. You don't want that to happen because you can kill the roots on one side when your tree is very young. When your tree gets much older, it's less likely that's going to happen because trees, they have a tendency when they're older, their roots will dig in the ground or spread out in order to search for water. But this complete one here is done. Let me show you exactly what I do. Now I have a 5-gallon bucket of azomite. I buy this stuff in bulk, 25 to 50 pound bags from my local hydroponics. Don't go on Amazon if you don't have to, because the shipping can be astronomical. Go to your local hydroponic stores, okay? They have these things, all right? And I simply take a cup to a full cup, depending on the size of the tree, and I sprinkle it all around. Now you can see I've already done that here. And then I go in here and take a half a cup, which is roughly 8 tablespoons of my special fertilizer. An organic fertilizer that I found many years ago, and they don't make it anymore. So I bought a ton of it. When I say pounds upon pounds, I have buckets of this stuff. And so I go in here and I sprinkle it around and so forth. And then I grab my tool here. Now this tool helps me out big time. This is a tool made by a company called Corona. I can sit here and do this. But if my back is hurting me that day, I can extend this tool and stand straight up and just go ahead and do this. That way I don't hurt my back. And just mix everything together. Mix it in the soil. Once I throw the organic matter in here, what tends to happen at that point, we get a lot of worm activity. And folks, if you got organic matter, make sure you add some banana peels in here. Let's do that right now. I'm going to show you exactly how that goes. So the goal here is after I mix all of this together, and you want to mix it in there because as you water, remember again, I've already pre-wet the soil in here. However, you can see all the feeder roots. Look at the feeder roots. If you break some off, it's okay, but you can stuff them back in there. You'll probably notice that you see a lot of nuts shells. That's because they got squirrels coming in here. And they bring their nuts from somewhere. Someone's feeding them because these are not nuts grown around here. And they come in here and just have a ball and just, I guess they find the home really a good place to be. But what I want to do now is just sort of dig a trench here. Wow, look at the roots. Healthy, healthy roots. You folks, if you want to get in closer, let's get in closer. So you'll notice here's some of the roots that are extending. And so they extend out. Remember, if you're going to put them in a closed container, they're sort of contained. So they're going to spread out first and then start digging down. And if I were to go on the outside of this container, I can move the micro bark aside. You'll see these roots. This is very healthy roots. They're not black. They're very pink and white if I were to scrape them off. They're very healthy. But here's why I'm going here. I want to go ahead and put a couple of banana peels in here. No big deal, right? Well, I'm going to invite the worms in. And I have a box of eggshells here. So I'm going to put about half of them over here, like this. And the other half are going to go on the other side. And I'm simply going to crush them up because I want to help my worms out. And I'm simply going to cover it up. Simple as that. Once again, remember, I'm going to top this off with a nice thick layer of compost. So look at the worms in here. They're nice and fat. Found a couple of the big jumpers the other day. So we're going to put this in here. And of course, we have grubs. You're always going to have grubs. But the birds love them. I simply toss them aside. Take the remainder of the eggshells, plop them on in here like so. And sometimes if you want, you can go ahead and throw something more thinner like some toilet paper, a couple of paper towels, but make sure you wet it. And if you want to shred you some paper, put it in here too. They love paper. Worms love paper. But I'm going to go ahead and put this in here like this now. Once again, I'm going to work around the tree trunk here, sort of spreading it out. I'm now going to spread this soil out to the ends, keeping the tree trunk a little free and clear of much of that soil. Because truly, when I water, I want my water to be trapped in this ring. Okay? Once again, you can always mulch, but mulching is not necessary when you have very established trees. Okay? And if their canopy is healthy and you have a large canopy, it's going to shade the soil anyways. So, but that's up to you. If you do have mulch, you want to move it all so you can do what I do. Okay? So, more grubs. But I'm going to go ahead and take some compost. Let me show you how that looks. So it's feeding time. 2023 is now April. These are all my stone fruit, and they happen to be growing in the ground with the exception that I built raised bed boxes, just like you would if you were growing some sort of edible. Now, the bottom is open to the ground. Once again, they're raised bed boxes. Now, please don't ask if this is treated wood or untreated wood. This is not treated wood. It was banned in California for a long time. So let's get back to the nitty gritty. Now, what I typically do every spring in the months of April and August, some people prefer to do it in March and July, but I'm going to go in here and I'm simply going to add azomite, which I've already done. And then I'm going to get my special fertilizer. And the reason I'm recapping this for you folks, because if you missed it, you're going to come back to it. Here's a half a cup of my special fertilizer. I'm going to sprinkle this all around. And this is a young tree, so I don't need much. And then on top of that, I'm going to go ahead and take my trusty tool here, mix this all in. But I do have some California poppies that are growing in here, so I'm going to toss those out. And there's nothing you can do about things growing inside your raised beds. Birds are simply going to help you do it. But this is a good time to get in here and clean out your raised beds if you have weeds and things like that. Okay? So now that I've gone ahead and mixed this up, I can get back down here and start pulling out any sort of weeds that you may not want in your bed. All right? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dig some trenches and I'm going to start dumping things like banana peels, putting them in the hole. And the reason I'm doing this because I'm going to top this off with some organic matter. Okay? Once again, get rid of the weeds. And if they come back, that's okay. You're going to mulch this heavily because mulch is going to suppress most of the weeds. All right? Then I'm going to go in here with some eggshells. And then I'm going to put those in the opposite side. We're going to put half on one end. This is just organic matter we're adding to the soil. We're trying to invite the worms in here. Okay? I'm going to crush these down and we'll be right back. So now I'm over here at my compost bin. And the goal here is I'm going to get some of this already mature compost out of here. At least 2 shovelfuls. I'm going to simply dump it in there. And now I'm going to work my way closer to you. So now that I've added some finished compost, I'm going to come over and add some unfinished compost because it's got some organic matter in there. I'll tell you why in just a second. I'm working over and let's look down. And we just so happen to be right underneath the counter here. And we're going to dig down deep in here because there's a lot of worms in here and a lot of organic matter. Okay? I'm just going to take this over here. Throw me a nice couple of shovelfuls over there. And remember, there's a lot of worms in here. And I mean lots of worms. Now, once again, when you do this, you may get food that come up in your boxes. And I simply bring it back over here and dump it in here. Now, once again, there's a ton of worms in here, people. There's a ton of worms. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the big particles and I'm going to mix this all up first, but I want to break everything down. Okay? The worms that are going to be in here before the other ones come up through the ground, they're going to multiply very, very fast. Okay? I'm not a big fan of worms all over my garden because worms can really screw up the garden in many ways. And if you folks don't know that, you need to do a little bit more research and studying, and you'll learn that really, really fast. Okay? And now, look at this. Look at this. Look at the worms. Jumpers. Big jumpers. And you'll notice that once you got this down, you're going to water it all in, and this tree has now been fed. It won't be needing to be fed until August this year. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and water this in slightly. Okay, so the worms can go ahead and find their way out of the sun because they do not like the sun. Be right back. So now I'm gonna water this in. Once again, we already know that I pre-wet the soil before, and it's not gonna kill your tree. You wanna water it in because you want your worms to go down and, you know, be safe from the sunlight up here. And you're just gonna moisten the soil that you've just put into the actual box. Now this is gonna be a long video, folks. And so I repeated this on another tree because I wanted you to see when I actually add the compost as well. I wanted to show you every step. Once again, you're gonna see some organic matter above the soil. And once you get this in, you can come back a week later because a lot of the organic matter on top is going to be on top and you can remove it accordingly. Now this is good. This is really, really good here. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And this is set from this point. Everything is fed. I'm simply gonna take the natural drip line that I have in here and I'm gonna place it right here. Of course, there we go. Go ahead and put that in there like that. Get this little lump out of the way here. Water that in. There we go. Fill in those pockets. Now, this is done. All we have to do now is move on to the next tree and do the same thing. We repeat, repeat, repeat. And in August, we'll repeat it again for a second time for the year. But these trees will have enough feeding. Remember, enough feeding. If you think that the organic matter is going to decay just like that, it's not. It's going to break down slowly along with the compost that's in there. Remember, I have organic matter and compost. I have azomite that is going to stimulate the microbial environment. And then on top of that, I have a fertilizer, a slow release fertilizer. Not only that, but did you see me put worm castings in here? No. Why? Worms that come and occupy the area are going to consume the organic matter and leave behind poop called worm castings. So this entire box, this is why I love boxes, because I can contain the feedings of my trees right here. And once again, this is a small tree. This tree is not a year old. It's a peach tree. But let me show you one that's much better. As you see, here's my Santa Rosa plum. And then on the right side, you have my Satsuma plum. They're coming into bloom. Well, actually, they're past bloom, but, you know, getting all their fill-ins. And, of course, over here, you can see my apricot. Let's get a little closer, and I'm going to show you exactly what's happening with it. As you see, it's filling out nicely, but I want you folks to pay. This June, July, it'll be 3 years. You see how loaded it is with fruit? On every branch, literally all over the tree. Isn't that amazing? Even right where my hands can reach, there's fruit galore everywhere. It's absolutely amazing. I've added the azomite. I've got to get my special fertilizer, my compost, and whatnot in here. And this tree is ready to be, well, let's just say it's ready to rock and roll. I hope that helps all of you. Once again, feeding your trees should not be a problem. It shouldn't be problematic. It's very simple. Now, if you're dealing with trees that are grown in containers, you need to feed them on a monthly basis. However, if you know how to properly dig the soil out around the trees that are in containers, and you add organic matter, your food scraps, and some compost that you make at home, you don't have to feed your trees in containers every month at all. You don't. You simply feed them every 3 months. You didn't know that, did you? You heard it here first. But you can always foliar feed. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Shalom.